Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. On Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Welcome to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, Mindset Elevation Coach, publisher of the beloved Aspire magazine. Do you know Aspire has been inspiring women to live their best lives since 2006? And after 18 years, it's still free. It's part of my mission to inspire women around the world to live their best lives. Grab your subscription at subscribe2aspire.com and dive into the most recent issue and claim dozens of transformational gifts from our supporters and visionaries in our circle. Well, my friend, I got to tell you, I have been bringing you inspiring conversations for 8 years now. And one of the threads that I have found through every conversation with my guests is that the women that have joined me, their mess, their struggles, their life brought them to the work that they are here to do, their soul's purpose. And my special guest today is Kim Coots. And we're going to be talking about something that I know I struggled with. That's why I'm so excited about this conversation. And that's about being a busy businesswoman who feels stuck in the stress for success lifestyle. Come on, I know some of you are nodding your heads. In that lifestyle, it feels like anxiety, overworking, lack of life balance. I lived that way 30 years ago in my first business. I can truly relate, and I remember the pain. And as I shared, transformational empowerment coach Kim Coots is here today. She's going to share how the unexpected death of her daughter and ancient healing modalities helped her go from burnt out and unfulfilled to rediscovering the magic and meaning in life again. Kim is an Inc. 500 award-winning business executive and entrepreneur turned transformational empowerment coach. She helps businesswomen liberate themselves from a stress for success lifestyle so they can make a powerful impact without sacrificing their joy, relationships, or vitality. She's experienced firsthand the devastating effects that chronic stress, anxiety, and overworking can create. She used to rely on wine and pills to temporarily escape the stress and quiet her mind so she could sleep. Then she'd drink coffee to function while running on empty. Oh boy, I can relate to the drinking coffee all day long to just exist. Eventually, her health and relationships suffered and she wasn't happy or fulfilled despite her success. Then her worst fear became a reality when her only child died unexpectedly. She turned to sacred, empowering modalities like energy medicine and astrology to navigate her dark night of the soul, know herself deeply, and rediscover the magic and meaning in life again. And I'm so excited to say that now Kim guides others in liberating themselves through sacred empowerment too. Kim, we've known each other a long time. I am so grateful that you've joined me today.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me and for that beautiful introduction.
Well, I think, a lot of your vulnerability, your authenticity is really going to speak to a lot of women because a lot of times we hide our struggles. I know I did. And as I was reading yours, even though our stories are different in our experiences, I could relate to the anxiety and overwhelm and the chasing and the striving that I was caught up in 30 years ago and drinking 3 medium Dunkin' Donuts iced coffees a day. So I could really relate. So let's go back a little bit because I want to know what you think led you to be so success driven, because I think in that sharing, other women will maybe recognize the signs in themselves. So bring us back to what do you feel led you into that lifestyle?
Yeah, it really started in my teenage years. And at that time of my life, I was living in poverty. I moved from one foster home to another, lived with different family and friends. And the environment that I lived in, it was very common for kids to get involved in drugs or different things like that that weren't empowering. And I ended up moving to a small town to live with my aunt. And when I got there, I didn't fit in. And I was this tough city kid, which most people, when I tell them that, don't believe it, but I was this tough city kid. And I didn't fit in there. The school counselor told me, kids like you don't end up being much, and you better not cause trouble in my school, just because of how I looked. And I looked that way because when I lived in the city, I had to be tough. So I wanted to prove him wrong. So part of it started out with proving this counselor wrong, that I was a straight A student. Um, and because I really took care of myself a lot, I had 3 jobs in high school. So what I found was, when I was working, and I worked hard, I was a hard worker. My bosses and my supervisors would say, wow, you do such a great job. And they would give me other responsibility, promoted me. So I learned that by pleasing people, I gained acceptance. And by working, I earned money, and I could rely on money to take care of myself. So those were kind of the patterns that started this path of me working a lot and really looking at money as my security, because I couldn't depend on a lot of people. I had to depend on myself. And I became a single mother at a young age, and I had this little child to take care of on top of, taking care of myself. So some of those are really the patterns that started that for me.
I can relate in a lot of ways. I was a single welfare mom. My daughter's now 40. Um, and I can remember a lot of the feelings that you just expressed. So, you did extremely well, right? For
Yeah.
as long as you could, you were highly successful business executive and an entrepreneur. When did, excuse the language, the shit hit the fan with your body started shutting down? Maybe you weren't happy. Was it slow process, or and you saw it kind of happening, but you kept ignoring it? Or was it what I call the cosmic 2x4?
I'm going to say both. I know that sounds kind of weird, but there were signs along the way. So I kind of knew those signs along the way, but I didn't necessarily say, oh, there's something wrong with this, because I saw this pattern in a lot of women I worked with. And in my career, in the earlier days, I worked with a lot of men, and I became an Inc. 500 award-winning business leader at the age of 24. I was an executive for a $6 billion company. So I worked with men a lot. And there were very few women that I worked with, but the few women that I did get to work with, this was a common pattern that I saw, was this, trying to do it all, be it all, have a family, have a career, travel, all of this heavy workload. And it's common not to have time for yourself. But I remember, gosh, this was probably 25 years ago. I remember one day thinking, I sense this fear in the back, always running in the background of my life, or anxiety just kind of constantly running in the background, but it wasn't, I don't know if that makes sense, but I remember telling myself that it feels like I'm running on this anxiety in the background of my life that's driving me. And I think part of that was, am I enough? I was a young businesswoman. I didn't get a college degree. I went to college and didn't finish because I became a mom, but I always felt like I don't have a college degree. I need to get all of this training. I need to do that to be as as good as other people are that went to college. So there was always kind of that feeling of, I need to be more, and I need to do more. So that was kind of the the common theme that I had for myself, but I saw a lot of other women have too. So I just kind of thought that was the mold of a successful woman. But then when, as I started aging and I saw all the women around me getting breast implants and Botox and fillers and all of these things to stay young, and I started doing all of that too, the stress really started out with, some digestive problems or, getting sick more often than other people or things like that, that I really didn't attribute to stress. But it really hit the fan for me when everything kind of came together. I experienced the loss of my daughter, my mother, we had COVID going on. All of the toxins that I had put in my body from all of these, procedures that I had done. It was just kind of that perfect storm. And then I had severe health issues at that point.
I remember you going through that. And so much of what you just shared, I know so many women are shaking their heads. I can relate to that phrase you said, anxiety and fear running in the background. Like, if I stop now, I'm going to fail. What will people think? It's like you couldn't drop one ball because you thought the whole house would come tumbling down. That's what I used to feel. And I didn't realize we had so much in common because I'm a high school dropout, took some college, never finished, and had that same script for many years. Who am I to do this when I don't have an education? I'm so glad we both overcame that.
Yes.
We're going to take a quick break, Kim. When we come back, I want to talk about some of the telltale signs that helped you realize it wasn't working anymore, because I know those signs are really going to help women who are relating with your story identify it within themselves. So we'll be back in a moment, my friends. I'm with transformational empowerment coach Kim Coots. You can learn more at kimcoots.com. We'll be right back.
Inspiration for a Woman's Soul. Aspire Magazine, inspiring and supporting women on the path of self-discovery. Claim your free digital subscription today, which includes access to thousands of dollars of personal development bonus gifts from Team Inspiration partners. Claim your Aspire Magazine subscription today at subscribetoaspire.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm here with Kim Coots, transformational empowerment coach. And right before the break, you are sharing almost like the perfect storm, right, of everything that just all came together around 2020 and really knocked you for a loop. And with everything that you described, multiple losses, your own physical health, you shared some of the signs. I'd love you to expand on that a little more to help women who I believe are in that. They might not identify, Kim, as stress for success, but they have wounds pushing them forward instead of joy and inner fulfillment pushing them forward, like I did. Like, low self-worth was making me push, chase, and strive. Would you expand on that a little?
Yes, I shared, a little bit about that, using, being dependent on things for energy or to de-stress. So those are some big signs, like if you're using caffeine or things to energize you through the day, but then you need, something to help you de-stress at night, like wine or pills. And it's not that any of those things are bad. It's more of, is there a pattern there of you have to rely on those or be dependent on those to function? Because for me, I remember in those earlier days, I always had to be doing something. And if I did have time and space where I could be quiet or relax, I didn't know what to do with myself and it didn't feel right. So always being on the go, never having time to relax. Or what I uncovered with that, honestly, is when I did finally have to relax because my body said, we can't do this anymore, and I was forced to relax, is I then had to start allowing the feelings come through that I had been suppressing for a long time. So I would say, avoidance, I guess you could call it, whether it's always having to be busy, not liking the quiet, even though you say you want the quiet, is a part of it. Um, and I remember this day that I was outside in my yard. I was probably in my late 20s, and I was looking at my house. I'm like, I've got the house, I've got the money, I've got the car, I've got the bank account, I've got all of these things that my younger self thought would never be possible for me, but I'm not fulfilled. I don't feel happy. I don't feel fulfilled. And those were all the things that I thought that I needed in order to make me happy. And I realized that I wasn't. I realized that while I was grateful for everything that I had, I felt like I wasn't doing what I came here to do in my life. And so that feeling of there's got to be something more to life than this is a telltale sign that either you're living a stress for success lifestyle, or maybe you're not quite aligned with what your soul calling is. But those are some of the signs that I think are common for women. And of course, the never having time for myself. It's that lack energy of there's not enough, and that can kind of translate into, am I enough? That
Well,
lack of energy.
you're bringing back so many thoughts and memories. What you said about that day in the yard, right? You were young to experience that because you said you're late 20s. I call it like a lot of midlife women. I'm 60, going to be 62 now, but in all the conversations I've had on the show and the summits and other things I do, I hear that common thread of one day I woke up in the middle of my life and said, how the hell did I get here? Because it was not fulfilling. They weren't happy. It's like they had realized they had made choices from this other place, this other energy, and not the truth of who they are. That's what I heard when you described what happened in the yard. You looked around like, oh my God, I created all this, but I'm not happy. Did it feel like that way, like a midlife awakening, but you experienced yours young?
It did, especially when I closed my spiritual healing practice to fully go into my corporate career. Then I started experiencing extreme anxiety, panic attacks, depression that I'd never experienced before. And I did that. I went that way for about 5 years of just corporate work because my mother was sick, my husband was disabled, and I was helping my daughter in her life. So I felt so responsible for everyone and everything that I even sacrificed my spiritual business to focus solely on corporate work and make the money that I felt like I needed to make to take care of everybody else. That was really a turning point for me because I've been working since I was 12 years old. 14 was my first paycheck job. So I've been working for a long time, but it was really when I went from being an entrepreneur and a corporate executive to just focusing on corporate that it got really intense with the depression, anxiety, lack of fulfillment, but really feeling responsible for other people. And that was my excuse to why I had to do it.
So it's at the cost of yourself, which I think I know a lot of women are raising their hand right now, right? We sacrifice ourselves.
Yeah.
And just from my own journey, like the words I would use to describe the anxiety and depression that you experienced, would you say it was like your soul was yearning, saying, Kim, what are you doing? You're walking away from your true purpose. And do you think that's why all that anxiety, depression came when you shut that down? It was like you were shutting down your soul's path. Did it feel that way to you?
It did. And I didn't recognize it right away, but it was when I went back to my spiritual practices after it was probably close to 5 years. When I went back to it, I was like, oh, no wonder why I'm so sick and unhappy is before, yes, I was stressed out because I had my own spiritual business and I was a corporate executive, but at least I had the spiritual business that was lighting up my soul. So when I gave that up, it really drained me, and I recognized that it was my soul trying to get my attention to say, hey, you're not, you kind of got on a detour here. We got to get you back on the path.
Yeah, I can relate to that. And I can relate to those feelings of of the anxiety and depression, once I started living, because I struggled with that for the first 30 something years of my life. Once I started honoring my soul in truth and diving deeper into my spiritual journey, I'm going to tell you, a lot of it just released. Not
Mhm.
saying I don't still have anxious days, because I'm human, but I don't live in the state anymore. And my spiritual emotional health is so important to me. Sometimes I got to remember, Lynn, you have a physical side too. So everything you said really resonated. And for the women who are out there that are putting themselves last at the very, very end of their very, very, very long to-do list, what would you say to them now that you're on the other side?
Well, I would say to them, it's time to liberate yourself from the Cinderella story. That's what I call the Cinderella story, and be the success goddess that you really are. Because underneath that feeling that I know very well, or that belief that I know very well of, I have to do this because my family is depending on me, or because of this or that, you can only go that way for so long before it taxes your energy so much that you're like, for me, my body literally shut down and said, if you aren't going to change these patterns, then it almost forced me to, because my body started shutting down and I couldn't do it. So when
Yeah.
you have to sacrifice your health, your energy, your joy to create income or success, yes, there's times that we might have to do that for a little while, but to do that ongoing as a lifelong pattern, I call that poverty. I mean, when you have to spend more of your life force energy than you can afford to without sacrificing your health and joy, that's poverty.
Yeah. And you know what too is, and I think we'll be talking about this because I love how you said, like, um, the goddess energy.
Mhm.
Is I used to, in that first business that I opened in 92 after I got off welfare, it was highly successful. It was retail. I had it for 10 years. But I look back now, I didn't see it as I was living it at the time. I wasn't on the path. I was chasing every business award, which I would win in my business, but it was coming from a wounded place. And then when I think of who I am now and how I run my business, and we do 4-day work weeks, I take 13 weeks off a year, we're closed every Friday. I'm like, how did you get there, Lynn? How did you get to? I had a stroke at 40, Kim. So everything you're saying, I can relate. I was pushing so much, my body was like, are you going to listen? If not, we're going to give you this. So your whole story is just resonating as a woman on a soul level. Do you feel now that you've softened into what success is meant to feel and be, like a more balanced view of success?
Absolutely, but I want to tell you, it was not easy for me. I'm a very stubborn person, so ingrained in me. So it wasn't like it was this beautiful unfolding of that happening for me. It was like, I don't know if you ever heard the phrase, the universe keeps, sending you opportunities to learn, and they just get harder and harder until you finally get it. It took me a long time to get it, but I honestly know in my heart that my path, and being so difficult and so extreme, I think is because I can relate to so many people now and help them on their path, because I've experienced things very deeply, and it took me a long time to get to where I am. So now that I know, how to do it, and I can help other women so that they don't have to go through all of the time and stress and suffering that I did, it's definitely worth it for me.
It is, it is. And I tell everyone, I go, I have no regrets about my path. And there was a lot of what others would perceive as negative in tough situations. But I look at it how you just stated. Everything I've gone through has prepared me for who I am today. And who I am today chooses to use those experiences to elevate the lives of others, right? And it gives me more empathy and compassion. And I will add, before we go to the next break, My journey wasn't roses and butterflies either, because I was so ingrained in that pushing, chasing, striving from that fear and lack energy that if I don't do this, I'm going to lose everything. And there's a sense of value that I fought it the whole way. And that's why I got hit with quite a few cosmic 2x4s back then. Um, so I told people, listen, the journey inward isn't always roses and butterflies and unicorns dancing in the clouds. So it's worth it though on the other side. We're going to take another break and we'll be back in a moment with transformational empowerment coach Kim Coots. Please learn more, visit her, check out everything that she's offering at kimcoots.com. We'll be back in a moment.
Are you ready to create and live the divinely guided life intended for you? A life not bound by your past or tied to a specific future. A life beyond your fears and what ifs that is filled with limitless possibilities. Experiencing an empowered life of fulfillment, joy, and connection is possible when you embrace a spiritual, solutions-centered lifestyle. Through her transformational teachings and programs, Lisa Hermata, empowered Life View Guide, life transformation mentor, and founder of Love is the Seed, empowers women to break the barriers holding them back from living their sacred truth so they can find greater connection with their inner wisdom and their divine source to co-create a life that brings peace, joy, and self-acceptance. Visit loveistheseed.com for positive guidance and valuable resources to support you in embracing an empowered life view.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm here with the extraordinary Kim Coots, and we're having a magical conversation. And going to kind of shift gears a little, Kim, because I know this is part of your journey, part of what fuels you. And that was the unexpected passing of your daughter. It really shifted and impacted the way you live your life now. So bring us back to the part you want to share and how that has really shifted how you're living now.
Yeah, I first want to mention about 6 months before my daughter transitioned is when I quit my corporate job and started my own business consulting business, working with entrepreneurs. And I finally felt like my life was on track and I was doing what I wanted to do, left the corporate world behind, was creating my own schedule, working with clients I loved. And I just really felt like, oh, this is what I wanted. And at that time, my only child transitioned unexpectedly from a fentanyl overdose. She took a drug she didn't know was spiked with fentanyl. And I shared a little bit earlier that I was a young mom, but right before my daughter, I found out I was pregnant with my daughter, I was contemplating my second suicide attempt. So I really tied a lot of my purpose in life to my daughter, because she really gave me a strong sense of purpose when I didn't feel that as a teenager. And she still is the most meaningful thing in my life and always will be. She's my soulmate. So when she died unexpectedly, I can't even put into words what that was like. But I remember through that process, and then 3 weeks later, my mother died unexpectedly. So I had two significant losses in the same month. And it took me a while to process it enough to think about, but honestly, I just felt like my life, the life I knew, changed overnight. And there was no going back to it. But as I worked on, moving through my grief and accepting what my new life was and deciding what that new life was going to look like, it took a lot of time. It wasn't something that happened overnight, but I realized that the life that I had been living all of those years, and even the first 6 months of my new business, was a lot of stress. And it wasn't the fulfilling, joyful, like joy was a hard word for me, or having fun was a hard word for me because I was such a hard worker. But through those losses, I realized I can't go back to the person I was. And you never know how long you have here on earth. And I really wanted to find the courage to figure out what it was my soul really wanted me to do and do it. My greatest fear had become a reality when my daughter died. So I felt like I don't have anything to be afraid of anymore. But I'm human, so obviously I still have fears, but that's how I felt at the time. But I knew I didn't want to go back to the lifestyle that I had, even having my own business. I wanted to create more space for being in nature and for experiencing joy and for really deeply helping people transform their lives. So that was a huge transformational catalyst for me, those losses, because it helped me to say, and all that perfect storm that came together, and I had a health crisis on top of all of my losses, really helped me to have the time and space to decide what is a success goddess lifestyle for me and break out of the mold that not all, let me reword that many of the businesswomen that I was around were trying to fit into. And to me, there is no mold for it. It's uniquely designed to you. And it's about living your purpose, experiencing joy, and living life like an adventure and not a to-do list.
Just speaks to my heart. So it sounds as if you moved from that masculine energy, which is what's needed to exist in the corporate environment, over to the feminine, right? Because you use the words goddess and flow and joy. And that really resonates with me because I changed my whole business model in 2009 to walk away from all of that. And that's how I created the feminine collaborative marketing model and business. And in that process is how I found my peace and joy. So everything you said just speaks to me. I want to talk about, because in the intro I said you work with ancient healing modalities, and I was like, so how and when did you become involved in those sacred healing modalities? Was it before, when you had that initial spiritual practice, or was this part of your healing journey, or both?
Yeah, it really started when I was in my 20s. I was this busy corporate executive traveling all over the continent, and I would love to get massages. Like massages were my thing to turn off my mind for an hour. It's the only thing that would turn off my mind for an hour besides forcing myself to sleep. And I had this out of body experience during a massage one time. And it was so profound to me that I had to learn more. So I enrolled in massage therapy school because I'm like, what the heck happened? I just had this out of body experience where I heard this voice and felt these feelings that I can't describe in words, and I wanted to know what that was. So that's kind of what started that journey for me, is I wanted to know more about what that was, and that led me to studying Reiki. So it was a combination of I'm burnt out and stressed out. I'm a single mom, so I want to do things to take care of myself. But at the same time, as I learned those things for myself, I wanted to teach and offer them to other women because they were so profound to me. And that led me to discovering shamanic healing, or shamanism. And I remember when I first heard of that word, it sounded kind of scary to me. I'm like, what is shamanism? But it's basically the oldest healing modality known to man. It's over 40,000 years old. And that's what we could refer to as the medicine men and women of the ancient days, and how tribes would rely on them for guidance and healing. And I began studying shamanic healing and studied with some amazing, amazing experts. And Dr. Alberto Villaldo is one of them. But I studied that for many, many years. And I would say shamanic healing has been the biggest catalyst for me in my healing, and such a profound method. It's not a religion. There's no beliefs you have to subscribe to or anything, but the practices that are a part of shamanic healing are so empowering and transformational. And through those practices, it helped me to go from being the control freak, having to force everything and do everything myself, to learning how to co-create with spirit or the universe or God, goddess, whatever you would like to call what I say is infinite intelligence. But it really helped me co-create with infinite intelligence and learn how to live in a new way and to create in a new way and enjoy success in a way that wasn't forceful or controlling.
Isn't it such a more peaceful way to live? Like that's how I live my life. I don't have the shamanic background, but another similarity is I closed the retail store and went on a spiritual journey and became a massage therapist, Reiki practitioner. So I was giggling as you're sharing your journey. Like, are you kidding me? Our journeys are so similar. The searching, the yearning. You hid a lot of these um, modalities like shamanism from that other life, right? It was like you were Kim, the corporate, type A overachiever. Why did you feel you needed to hide it? Because I think a lot of women will relate because they're hiding aspects of themselves now. So you were hiding it, but now you're free. Talk about what caused you to hide it.
What caused me to hide it was I was operating in such masculine energy, and I worked with so many men in my career that I felt like it wasn't acceptable and they wouldn't take me seriously. And, I'll go back to that word mold again, but it seemed like there was this mold of what a successful person is. And that was my own conditioning from what I had been around for a long time. And I, I'm a consultant and I'm a president. I've run multi-million dollar companies and I help multi-million dollar entrepreneurs build their businesses. So I was afraid that if they knew of my spiritual practices, they wouldn't take me seriously, or they would think I was weird or crazy or woo-woo. I was supposed to be the intelligent, analytical one, solving and strategizing problems. And I suppressed my intuitive gifts in my career, and it actually sabotaged me. And that's one of the things that I help women understand is what their intuitive or success goddess archetype is, because when we suppress our gifts, it actually backfires on us. But I think that's really kind of why I hid it was, are people going to take me seriously? Or are they going to think I'm weird? It didn't seem like being successful aligned with being spiritual at the time.
Yeah, I get that. I've heard that from a lot of women, especially now that I'm thinking of it, a lot of women who are now in the personal spiritual development space as coaches, leaders, but left corporate America. They said the adjustment for them was really tough to let their whole self come through. And we're going to take another break, Kim. When we come back for our last segment, we'll talk about that. And I want to hear what you're up to, how women can learn more about you, any exciting projects that you have. So we're going to be back in a moment with Kim Coots. Learn more at kimcoots.com. We'll be back in a moment.
Are you ready to invite more gentleness and less judgment into your life? Self-worth coach Nancy Reed, longtime teacher and facilitator of A Course in Miracles, supports successful, empathic, and mission-driven women to embrace their perfectly imperfect self with curiosity and gentleness. She holds loving space and compassionately guides women to learn to trust the wisdom of their soul and live from their dreams, not their perceived limitations, and to quiet the voice of their inner perfectionist so they can hear their inner voice. Nancy is a popular media guest and author of the award-winning book, Happily Ever Now, Not After Everything Else is Perfect, a gentle guide for overcoming the paralysis of perfectionism by embracing our innate guidance. For supportive resources, inspiring content, and to join her Sparkle Circle Facebook community, visit nancyreed.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, and with me today is Kim Coots. And right before the break, we were talking about this need that I think so many women, but especially those who transition from corporate, have of hiding aspects of themselves. But when we hide aspects of ourselves, as I'm sure you found out, Kim, as I know I have, it takes more energy to hide who we are. It's like holding a beach ball under the surface of the water. It takes a lot of energy, and then when you move your hands, it just is free. That's how I felt when I integrated all of who I am and finally said, I am exhausted from hiding these parts of me. Is that kind of what it felt like for you, that freedom of, I need to be all of me? Um, did you feel it instantaneously, that freedom of owning all of yourself?
Yeah, I want to first touch on something that you just shared when you said, it feels like a beach ball and it's very exhausting and it takes more energy to actually suppress or repress your true self. And I totally can relate to that. I can also, and I think that's one of those telltale signs, but I will also say frustration was a big one for me because I felt frustrated a lot of the time. And I projected it outwards to say I'm frustrated at this circumstance or this person, but really I was frustrated for with myself for suppressing my true self. So frustration for me is a big telltale sign that I'm kind of drifting off that path. But honestly, it wasn't instantaneous freedom for me. It took me a long time to fully embrace it. And the universe kind of shoved me, into the light, let's say. I was doing a business podcast interview, that was a more masculine business podcast, and the co-host happened to stumble across my spiritual website and brought it up live on the air. So it was kind of like the universe saying, if you aren't going to share yourself, I'm going to help you. So I got a lot of help from the universe on kind of untangling all of my fear around what are people going to think of me. But that process for me, the liberation that I felt when I could finally say, I am a spiritual healer, but I'm also a success coach. I can be both. I can do both. And I am both. To really love and embrace myself and say, I am enough. I have enough. And live from my higher self rather than from my wounded self. Yes, the freedom in that's not dependent on outside circumstances or my bank account or how I look, is so freeing and joyful. I feel so much joy in the opportunity to experience life as an adventure now.
Yeah, I mean, I can just feel the energy difference even as you're speaking. I love that, living life as an adventure. And something you said, I kind of giggled inside when you said about when you were on that show, he found your sight in the universe, kind of like outed you, right? I used to say the divine, like I call the divine universe, etc. It's whatever your source of love is, whatever, we just use that name. But I always say, it will either be guiding you or it will push you and show you you have wings. And I used to wait for the push. Now I'm like, no, 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 you can guide me gently, please.
Yeah.
But I believe we're all here for a soul's purpose. I now have no doubt. And part of that work is, I believe, is clearing the muck that we picked up in this lifetime of living our experiences that keeps us from shining our light, right? And it's like excavating. We're always excavating. I've been doing this 32 years from the spiritual personal development thing, and I'm still excavating, right? There's layers. But that's part of the adventure, don't you think, Kim?
Yes. And I love the phrase turning wounds into wisdom, but
Oh,
doing it in a gentle, loving way instead of a I have to fix myself or there's something wrong with me way.
yeah,
But
that's big.
yeah. Yeah.
And one of the things too, the wounds into wisdom, why that was important for me is for the first 30 years, I carried the labels of my experiences if they were who I was. Single welfare mom, runaway, high school dropout. I was carrying them, so of course I was projecting the energy of the self-worth that went with those labels. As I did this work, I was like, I am not any of those things. Those were experiences I had, and I was able to do the excavation work to remove the label, right? Like
Mhm.
I even tell people, I go, listen, I may be a publisher, I may be a mindset elevation coach, but they're not who I am. They're the labels I use to exist in the world. But who I am is so much bigger than that. That's the essence of who we are. And that's what I feel like you've been describing is like this merging, this clearing out of what no longer worked for you and the calling in of who you truly are. So that could come to the forefront.
Yes, and it was also about going beyond my roles and goals to really deeply know myself, because I got so lost in my roles and my goals that I didn't really know who I was or what I wanted. And I'm very empathic, so I would always adjust myself based on what I could sense the other person needed from me. And I really didn't have a good sense of myself. And astrology really helped me with that. When I learned astrology and discovered my birth chart and learned all kinds of awesome insights, like my life challenges and my soul path and gifts, it was like a permission slip to be myself. And truly, deeply getting to know myself has been so profound and amazing. Like it was amazing to really get to know myself when I didn't feel like I knew who I really was.
Yeah, it's such a gift. I love that you found the tools that have supported you in that unfolding.
Yes.
We still have a few minutes left. I've been giving you URL, but tell us, what are you excited about? What do you have in the works to support women in rediscovering the magic and meaning in life again?
Well, I have so many things creatively happening in my mind, but what I'm working on now is I do offer sacred empowerment sessions and success goddess coaching for women, and getting started with a breakthrough session so we can take a look at, every woman is at a different place on her journey and has different needs and goals. But I love working one-on-one with women and working and sharing those sacred empowerment tools like shamanic healing and energy work and astrology, but facilitating that for them so that they don't have to go learn it on their own like I did. So I really bring a lot of all of these pieces together, from a healing aspect, connecting into your purpose, getting to know yourself deeply, and also either creating or growing a business. So I combine the healing aspects along with the success aspects. So working one-on-one with women. I have retreats coming up in the future, as well as a group program called Success Goddess, and working through the medicine wheel and the 12 different aspects of that to help with clarity, healing, empowerment, and purpose. So some programs, but I always love working one-on-one with women and doing that deep transformational work.
I love that. So it's not just for women that are entrepreneurs. Any woman on the path of self-discovery could schedule a session too.
Yeah, whether you're a high achieving woman, you could be an entrepreneur, a businesswoman, just a busy woman. But yes, if you are interested in what I call, liberating from that Cinderella story, so you're creating the life and career that you really want and can enjoy without burning out.
What an invitation, my friends. I want you to visit kimcoots.com. All the details and links are down below in the show notes. And Kim and I, we've been in a circle together for so long. I was trying to think before we got on this episode. We've been connected virtually for quite a while now. So I've been watching your journey, your transformation. I've always loved the how you show up with intention and authenticity, even before you started doing this deep dive work. So I'm so grateful that you joined me today, that you're stepping into the wisdom woman that you have always been and fully owning it, because I have no doubt it's going to be magical, and everything that's coming and that you're birthing through that space is going to be so empowering for you and for women. So thank you, my friend.
Oh, Linda, thank you so much. And you are so inspiring and such a beautiful, bright light. So thank you for everything that you do.
You're welcome. And everyone, again, I'm going to give you that URL. That's Kim Coots, COOTS.com. And until next time, my friends, choose love, choose joy, choose happiness. Blessings.
Thanks for listening to Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. Join our sacred space every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern and meet leading female visionaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. Inspired Conversations with Linda Joy is a soulful venue where guests share the obstacles they've overcome, along with wisdom and lessons learned on their personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic and soulful living.